Daniel had always believed that kindness was worth more than money, even though he rarely had enough of either. At 38 years old, he balanced 2 exhausting jobs while raising his 8-year-old son, Noah, alone. Since losing his wife several years earlier, every day had become a careful routine of responsibility. He woke before sunrise to prepare breakfast, packed Noah's school bag, rushed to work, returned just in time to help with homework, then headed to his evening shift before finally collapsing into bed long after midnight. Sleep was a luxury he could seldom afford, but seeing Noah smile made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. Life had taught Daniel to live with worn-out shoes, patched jackets, and second-hand furniture. Their small apartment was far from perfect, but it was filled with warmth, laughter, and the comforting feeling that they would always face difficulties together. Noah never complained that they couldn't afford expensive toys or vacations. Instead, he treasured simple evenings spent playing board games, reading adventure books, or cooking homemade dinners with his father. One chilly autumn afternoon, Daniel finished his grocery shopping and began walking toward the bus stop with several heavy bags in his hands. The wind carried fallen leaves across the sidewalk, and people hurried past, eager to escape the cold. As he approached an old bus shelter, something caught his attention. A young girl sat alone on the wooden bench, hugging a faded backpack tightly against her chest. She looked no older than 9 years old. Her oversized coat had several tears, her shoes were badly worn, and strands of untidy brown hair framed a pale, tired face. She kept her eyes fixed on the ground, avoiding everyone who walked by. Daniel slowed his steps. Many people noticed the child but continued on without saying a word. Something inside him refused to do the same. He carefully set his grocery bags down before speaking in the gentlest voice he could manage. "Hello. Are you waiting for someone?" The girl looked up cautiously. Her blue eyes carried a sadness far beyond her years. "No," she answered quietly. "Do your parents know you're here?" She hesitated before softly shaking her head. "I don't have anyone." Those 4 words struck Daniel harder than he expected. He knelt so they were at eye level. "Have you eaten today?" She looked embarrassed before whispering, "Not since yesterday." Without another question, Daniel led her to a nearby cafe. He ordered a warm bowl of soup, a sandwich, and hot chocolate. The girl stared at the meal for a moment as though she couldn't believe it belonged to her. She thanked him politely before eating slowly at first, then faster as hunger took over. "My name is Daniel," he said. She swallowed and smiled faintly. "I'm Emily." They talked quietly while she finished eating. Emily explained that she had spent months moving between temporary shelters after losing the only relatives who had cared for her. Eventually, the shelter closed, and she found herself sleeping wherever she could stay warm. She carried everything she owned inside the small backpack resting beside her chair. Daniel listened without interrupting. Every sentence made his heart heavier. He could hardly imagine a child surviving alone for so long. After leaving the cafe, Daniel contacted local child services, believing they would immediately place Emily somewhere safe. The staff thanked him and assured him they would investigate her situation. Before leaving, Emily looked back several times, giving Daniel a shy wave that lingered in his memory long after she disappeared through the building's doors. Days passed, but Daniel couldn't stop thinking about her. He called regularly to ask whether she was safe. During one visit arranged by the agency, Noah met Emily for the first time. They instantly connected over comic books, puzzles, and their shared love of drawing. Their laughter filled the small visitation room, sounding as natural as if they had known each other for years. On the drive home, Noah stared out the window for several minutes before speaking. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Emily doesn't have anyone." "I know. Could she be part of our family?" Daniel gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. The question echoed through his thoughts all evening. He knew how difficult adoption would be. His income barely covered rent, food, and school expenses. Friends would surely call him irresponsible. Relatives would question his judgment. Government inspections, interviews, and endless paperwork would test every ounce of patience he possessed. Yet every time he remembered Emily's quiet voice saying, "I don't have anyone," his doubts faded. A few days later, Daniel visited the agency once again. Emily looked surprised to see him. "I thought maybe you forgot me," she admitted. Daniel smiled warmly. "I couldn't forget you if I tried." For the first time since they met, Emily smiled without fear. In that quiet moment, Daniel made a decision that would change all of their lives forever. He didn't know how they would overcome the financial challenges ahead or whether the adoption would even be approved. He only knew one thing with complete certainty. No child deserved to grow up believing that nobody wanted them. As he walked out of the agency with the adoption application in his hands, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. 15 years passed, bringing changes that Daniel could scarcely have imagined on the day he first met the frightened little girl at the bus stop. The tiny apartment that had once echoed with the laughter of two children had become quieter, but it was filled with photographs that told the story of a family built not by blood, but by love. Pictures of birthdays, school graduations, camping trips, and holiday dinners covered the living room walls. Every frame reminded Daniel that adopting Emily had been the greatest decision of his life. Emily had grown into a remarkable young woman. The shy 9-year-old who had once been afraid to look strangers in the eye had become confident, compassionate, and determined. She studied harder than anyone around her because she never forgot the difficult road that had brought her into Daniel's family. While many students dreamed of high-paying careers, Emily dreamed of helping people who had no voice. She chose to study law, believing that justice should belong to everyone, not only to those with money or influence. Daniel proudly attended every important milestone. He sat in the audience during her university graduation, applauding until his hands hurt. Tears filled his eyes as Emily accepted her diploma with honors. When reporters asked her after the ceremony who had inspired her success, she answered without hesitation. "My father taught me that doing the right thing matters more than taking the easy path." Daniel smiled quietly from the crowd, hoping no one noticed him wiping away tears. Noah had also built a successful life. After graduating as an engineer, he found steady work and often visited home on weekends. Although both children were adults now, they never missed Sunday dinners. Daniel insisted they gather around the same old dining table where they had shared countless meals through years of financial hardship. They laughed about childhood memories, teased one another, and always ended the evening promising to meet again soon. Life finally seemed peaceful. Daniel had retired from one of his jobs but still managed a small property that had belonged to his late parents. The land was modest and located outside the city, but it carried deep sentimental value. His parents had dreamed of building a family home there one day, and Daniel kept the property even though several developers had offered generous amounts of money to purchase it. One afternoon, an expensive black car stopped outside Daniel's house. A sharply dressed businessman introduced himself as Victor Lawson, representing a property development company. "We're prepared to make you an excellent offer," Victor said confidently. Daniel politely declined. "I'm sorry, but the land isn't for sale." Victor smiled politely, though disappointment flashed across his face. "Perhaps you'll reconsider." "I won't." The conversation ended peacefully, but Daniel noticed the man's smile disappear before driving away. Several weeks later, Daniel received an unexpected legal notice claiming ownership documents connected to the property contained forged signatures. At first, he assumed it was a simple administrative mistake. He gathered every record he possessed and visited the local office, expecting the confusion to be resolved within hours. Instead, investigators informed him that a criminal complaint had been filed. Daniel stared at the paperwork in disbelief. There must be some mistake. The officials explained that financial documents and property records appeared to show fraudulent activity dating back several years. Daniel couldn't understand any of it. I've never changed a single document. His explanation seemed to matter very little. Within days, local newspapers published stories suggesting he had illegally manipulated ownership records. Television reporters stood outside his home. Neighbors who had greeted him warmly for years suddenly avoided eye contact. Rumors spread quickly through the community. Daniel felt his world collapsing. His savings disappeared almost immediately as he tried hiring legal assistance. The attorney assigned to his case admitted privately that the evidence looked overwhelming. "I'll do my best," the lawyer said carefully, "but the other side has enormous financial resources." Each new hearing brought additional accusations. Witnesses claimed they had seen documents Daniel insisted he had never touched. Financial statements appeared showing transactions he did not recognize. Expert testimony painted a picture of deliberate fraud. Daniel struggled to sleep. Night after night he sat alone in his living room staring at old family photographs. He wondered how everything had gone so terribly wrong. More than once he questioned whether anyone still believed in his innocence. One rainy evening he picked up the framed photograph taken on the day Emily's adoption became official. Emily stood between him and Noah with the biggest smile he had ever seen on her face. Daniel whispered quietly to the empty room. "I hope I haven't disappointed you." Hundreds of miles away, Emily was building a successful career at a respected law firm. Her days were filled with demanding cases, client meetings, and courtroom appearances. She had become known for careful preparation and relentless attention to detail. One morning, while drinking coffee before work, a news report playing on a television in the office lobby caught her attention. She froze. Daniel's face appeared on the screen. The reporter described allegations of property fraud and announced that the final court hearings would begin within days. Emily felt her heart race. She immediately searched every available public record related to the case. Hour after hour she reviewed legal filings, witness statements, financial documents, and investigation reports. Something didn't feel right. Dates failed to match. Several signatures looked inconsistent. Important details had been overlooked. The deeper she investigated, the stronger her suspicion became. Someone had carefully constructed a case against the man who had spent 15 years teaching her honesty, integrity, and compassion. Emily closed the final file and looked out the office window. She remembered a cold autumn afternoon when one kind stranger had bought a frightened little girl a bowl of soup instead of walking away. Without hesitation, she stood, requested emergency leave from her firm, gathered every document she had collected, and booked the earliest flight home. She wasn't returning only as Daniel's daughter. She was returning as an attorney determined to prove that the man who had rescued her life deserved someone willing to fight just as fiercely for his.